All right, we will get back to our Israel-Hamas conflict coverage in a moment, but now stateside, a stunning moment in a Fulton County, Georgia courtroom. The pro-Trump attorney who helped orchestrate the plot to overturn Georgia's 2020 election results entered a guilty plea on Friday, just as his trial was set to begin. Kenneth Chesebro pleaded guilty to one felony, conspiracy to commit filing false documents. He will now serve 5 years probation and pay $5,000 in restitution. Chesebro's decision comes just a day after Trump attorney Sidney Powell entered her own guilty plea. Joining us right now is the attorney representing Kenneth Chesebro, Scott Grubman. Scott, great to see you. Glad you could join us. So, this trial was set to begin yesterday. Why did your client, Mr. Chesebro, decide his plea deal was the best path forward?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I would say this is pretty common in criminal cases. As you get closer to trial, both sides start realizing that it's a scary proposition, particularly for a criminal defendant to have his or her future decided by 12 strangers. And so it's fairly common, whether it's a high-profile case like this or a run-of-the-mill case that criminal defense lawyers handle every day, that on the eve of trial, a plea offer will be made, and oftentimes those plea offers are accepted. And look, Mr. Chesebro is ready to move on with his life. He was ready to go home. He's ready to be with his family. And this plea deal gives him something that a trial could never give him, a guaranteed closure right now and a guarantee of not a day in jail. And so he is pleased with the plea deal, and he's pleased to be able to move on with his life.
But it's also, while it's common practice, is more than just being able to move on with your life. It is also as a result of indicators that the evidence is there, the evidence against you, and you're not likely to win this case. So was it your decision or by your encouragement, or was it Kenneth Chesebro, who is an attorney, who looked at the preponderance of evidence and figured there's no way I can win this?
So respectfully, Frederica, I'd like to push back a little bit. I don't think it's exactly accurate to say that a guilty plea indicates that the defendant or his lawyer thought that there was a likelihood of a conviction. Like I said, a guilty plea is simply the way to get a guaranteed outcome. And it was not my decision. It's never the lawyer's decision. Ultimately, it was the client's decision. Of course, all clients listen to their lawyers, or at least they should listen to their lawyers. And we gave Mr. Chesebro the advice we thought was best at the time. I won't get into the advice, of course, because that's privilege. But at the end of the day, it was his decision, and it was his decision to just put this case behind him.
All right. So this plea deal removed the racketeering and RICO charges your client was facing. But in court, Chesebro admitted that he conspired to put forward fake electors in Georgia with then President Trump. Does that mean, in so making that statement, that he can implicate the former president in a crime?
So I'm not trying to be too lawyerly, but I do want to just correct, something that may seem fairly minor, but I think is actually very significant. Is he admitted his role in preparing documents that at the time he could acknowledge were false documents. He admitted to a conspiracy to commit the filing of false documents. But I want to be clear about something. He did not implicate anyone else. And listen, Ken Chesebro is not interested in defending anyone. I've read, he's defending Trump. He's not interested in defending Trump, anyone, but he also didn't implicate anyone. He implicated himself. And now a part of his plea deal is if he is called to testify, he will testify truthfully. And I can tell you he absolutely will. However, Frederica, I don't think that's a guarantee that he will be called. And personally, I don't see how his testimony hurts Donald Trump, but if he is called to testify for the state, he'll come testify for the state. And Frederica, if he's called to testify by my friend Steve Sadow, who represents Donald Trump, then he will testify for Donald Trump or whoever else calls him to testify. And he's just going to come tell the truth, and whatever side, if they think that helps them, then that's up to them.
All right. Yeah. So you say he hasn't implicated anyone thus far, but if called to testify. Why else would there be a plea deal if it doesn't mean that it can potentially implement and further incriminate the biggest fish, of among the co-conspirators, and that would be the former president?
So I'll turn it around a little bit. I don't think this plea deal was an indication that there was some likelihood that there would be a conviction. Quite frankly, Frederica, I think this plea deal was offered by the district attorney's office out of a recognition that the district attorney's office, A, wasn't ready for this trial, and so they offered a probation-only plea deal, and it was under the Offender Act, which means there is no conviction. But even more importantly, Frederica, Mr. Chesebro has been called the architect of the fake elector scheme, and I would like your viewers to please ask themselves this question. If Mr. Chesebro was the architect of the fake elector scheme, some sort of scheme to bring down democracy, which is what I've heard over and over for the last few months, would the district attorney of Fulton County have offered him first offender probation? I really don't think so, Frederica. So I think this plea deal was offered because the evidence was not there that he was the architect of some sort of fake elector scheme. Mr. Chesebro was willing to live with it, and now he will fulfill the obligations that he committed to when he signed his plea deal. But in terms of whether he's flipping against anyone or anything like that, he's simply going to tell the truth. And if the jury decides that helps one side or the other, so be it.
Okay, and again, as part of this plea deal, it means accepting a sentence of 3 to 5 years of probation, a $1,000 fine, $5,000 in restitution to the state of Georgia, an apology letter, 100 hours of community service, and again, that promise to testify truthfully if called upon. Scott Grubman, thank you so much.
Thank you, and congratulations on your recent Lifetime Achievement Award. Well deserved.
So nice of you. Thank you so much. All right, we'll be right back.